Welcome friends to Farm Fresh Designs 59. Today's video is different than what I had planned. The 3 finials that I bought at the thrift shop recently, well, the idea that I had in my head, I could not make it work all day long. But today, something that I ordered from Amazon came in and I was so excited about it, and I wanted to go ahead and show it to you today as we prepare for the Christmas season. So I'm starting out with some of those little wood planks that you buy in a package from Dollar Tree. And I think there comes like 6 in a pack. And so I used the painter's tape to tape them all together. And I made either end 2.5 inches wide. And then I took it out to my miter saw. And then I went on and cut the whole stack at one time to get those pieces. And I used that tape as the guide to cut it. And also because they're just real thin little balsam wood pieces, if I had tried to cut them individually, they would have just made a big old mess. But because I taped them all together and made a big stack, it made it really easy to cut them. So I'm painting them all with Dixie Belle Dusty Blue. And I'm painting the front and the back. And I'm using this sort of non-traditional color for Christmas, and I think you'll see why in just a few minutes. And because this was kind of an unplanned project, I went on and used my heat gun to dry all of them. And so if you're in, kind of a pinch and you need to make some little Christmas ornaments, which is what these will be, and you need to go ahead and get the paint dry, if you don't have a heat gun, I'm sure that you could use a hairdryer on them. But I wanted to go ahead and get both sides painted on all of these particular pieces. And I'm going to need 9 of these pieces today. Now this is a little rolling pin. And there are 9 different squares on it. And they are different little scenes that are nativity scenes. And they are so beautiful. And so I took air dry clay and I rolled it out into where it was fairly thin. And then I used that rolling pin to then roll those little squares for the nativity scene. And it was a little bit hard because I was trying to, not to use too much clay at one time, but I wanted to use all the different squares. So it took me several times of taking that clay and rolling it out regular and then rolling it again with that rolling pin. But what I did is I tried to kind of use the concept if you're going to be making biscuits. I took the baking soda, the cornstarch that I normally would use when I am using air dry clay, and I just put some on my silicone mat. And then when I was rolling it out the first time with my flat rolling pin, I sprinkled some of the cornstarch on that so it wouldn't stick to it. But I didn't put cornstarch on the detailed rolling pin that I used. And so now what I'm doing is I'm just matching up all the 9 pieces to make sure that I have all of the little squares, because they're just so neat, and they have just, most of the scenes are the same, but they're just a different version of it. Now, because it took just a little bit to get them all rolled out, I set them over to the side on my silicone mat. And what happened was a very pleasant surprise. They went on and started drying, and it made it just a little bit easier to paint. But before I get ready to paint them, I go ahead and put them on with Titebond glue. Now, if you notice, I am not putting them in the center of the square. I'm leaving a border around each side, but I'm leaving just a smaller border down at the bottom and a larger border up at the top so that I can punch little holes in it. Now, if I had thought about it ahead of time, I would have gone on and punched the holes first before I put them on, but I didn't think about it. And so I end up going back later and punching holes with them. But I like the Titebond glue because it does set up fairly fast, and because this air dry clay had already started to dry up just a little bit, and the Tite Bond glue dries up fairly fast. Then it helped me because I wanted to make sure that I put something on the back of these little squares. So now that I've got all the little squares glued onto the little wood pieces, now I'm just going to go in and use linen white paint by Rust-Oleum to go ahead and get them all painted up. And I try to use a very light touch because I don't want to mess up any of the details. So while you're watching me paint just a little bit, let me tell you what I was going to do with the finials. I was going to turn them into little heads for snowman, and then the little round part up at the top, I was going to make it look like a toboggan. And then I took some square 4x4 pieces of wood, and that was going to be the body of it. So I was going to drill a little hole into those different square pieces. Then I was going to put the finial on top, and then it was going to be just the cutest little snowman you ever did see. Oh my goodness. By the time I got through with it, it looked like a first grader had done it. And so I kept texting my mom different pictures of it just to see what kind of thoughts she got. And she reminded me that when I was a school counselor, sometimes if I had to draw something on the board and the kids would get tickled at me because I'm not a good artist, I would remind them that I was not the art teacher, but that I was the school counselor. And so my mom, after sending her several pictures, she reminded me of how I used to tell the kids that I definitely was not an artist. And she said, it's just not looking too good. And so I decided to scrap the project. And so I'm going to think about it a little bit, and I may or may not bring it back. But that was my idea with it. But it just didn't work out. So now I'm using that big old daddy crocodile to punch the holes in it. And I punch some of the ornaments with holes on either side. And then some of the ornaments, I punch it right in the middle to just have one hole. And it was a little bit difficult, and that's why I say that I should have done that first. And so if you decide to make some little ornaments like that, I would suggest that you do punch the holes in first before you try to get started and do everything else, because it was a little tricky there toward the end. Now, one of the things that I forgot to tape was I used the Dixie Belle Voodoo Gel Stain that is called All Naturel, and to put so that it would show up on some of the detail. Now what I'm doing is I'm turning them all over, and I have a stencil of a lot of different snowflakes, and it's just like a little maybe 6x6 stencil. So I lay it down, and then I'm using this stuff called Ice Effect Paste that Jonelle sent me from Decoupage Central. And it is the coolest stuff. And I actually was going to use it on all of those snowmen that didn't work out. And I wanted to show you what it is today because it's so neat. So you lay the stencil down, and then you use one of those little scrapers to kind of push it into the stencils. And because this particular stencil is just kind of big, then I don't try to tape it down or anything. But it doesn't move at all. And so you push it into those little stencils and you scrape it off, and look at that. Isn't that just gorgeous? And when it dries, then it becomes iridescent. But it is just the coolest thing. And so when I thought about using those finials to make a snowman family, and I was going to use this Ice Effect paste, I just thought it was just going to all work out so well together. But, well, it did not. But if you want to use this paste, this is a really cool paste that you can use when it comes to like Christmas. And so now what I'm doing is I'm just showing you all the different little pieces that are on that decorative rolling pan. And that one's got the little 3 wise men. And most of them are just Mary, Joseph, and Jesus. And there is one right at the beginning that was the angel singing on the little horns. And then there's one that just says Merry Christmas. And I just tied different little things on it, either lace or just some twine. and then I put some little bows on them as well. So they're just some little Christmas ornaments that you can make, and you can make it with air dry clay, or even if you wanted to get this rolling pin just to make cookies. But it's something really small and sweet that you can use as we start thinking about getting Christmas presents ready for, maybe teachers or your neighbors, or just little secret sister gifts. Or if you want to make these to use as little hang tags on different gifts. But I just thought that rolling pin was so neat because it has all the different scenes from the nativity set. So today, I hope you like this video. And if you haven't subscribed, we'd love for you to be part of our family. And I will be back on Tuesday instead of Monday. So I hope you have a great rest of the weekend. And thank you so much for your support. Have a great day.